Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends, today we're going to be discussing a terrible question on behalf of Redditor. 3 seconds. Alright everybody, once you get a cool little cutscene, it's mandatory by law that you have to throw it into a video, and so that's what I did. But today, we're going to be reacting to a post by Cadence of Life on r/teachers, and they got probably a horrible question. So I'm going to read out their post, word for word, and then I'll give my honest reaction, maybe read through some comments, and see what you guys can let me know what you think in the comments. Alright, starting off. Quote, has anyone just given up with a student? At what point do you just accept that you can't do anything for them? I have a student who has only been in school 3 days of the last 3 weeks, and even work that they are capable of, simple writing assignments, they refuse to do, much less try to catch up on things like math. Today there was an assignment to describe an animal based on a picture. They wrote red, not even a whole sentence, and certainly not a paragraph. I just didn't have the energy to coax them along. I feel really guilty now, but I'm not sure I can keep dragging this child along. What do other people do? Also, parents are 100% not involved, which is part of why they are absent all the time. So bringing them into the conversation has proved useless. All right. So, yeah, you know, honestly, I don't blame you. I don't blame you one bit. You know, it's very interesting. There's a famous clinical psychologist by the name of Carl Rogers, and one of the prerequisites for engaging in a therapeutic relationship, or just a relationship where you're trying to change somebody, is that they have to want to change for themselves, right? It's like you can't force them to change. So until they actually want that, you can't do anything. And I think that that's correct, right? They actually have to want it. It's like, look, you can lead a horse to water, right? But you can't force it to drink. You know what I'm saying, right? It's like I can give you all the resources in the world, I can give you all the support in the world. It's like, but at the end of the day, if you're not accepting those supports, it's like you're out of luck. You know, it's like I can't do anything more for you. It's like I can try to help you along, but you still have to help yourself, right? There needs to be some individual responsibility on behalf of the student. Now, some people might argue, it's like, oh, well, look, do they need to be in a behavior room? Do they need to be in a remedial classroom? What's the reason? It's like, look, I'm not denying that there shouldn't be different distinctions based on a person's ability, and so we can group them differently, or we can provide them some additional supports that they need in order to be successful. But having said that, it's like, look, setting that aside, you're trying to provide those supports right now, and you could say, okay, well, the environment's different. It doesn't sound like that's an issue in this situation because they probably would have mentioned it. But if this is just general indifference, they don't want to do work. It's like they could clearly be fine in this general environment. If you're right next to them and they're still refusing to do work, it's like that's all on them. You know, like you can't really do much more to help them. It's like, yeah. So here's my take on this. Don't necessarily give up, but accept the fact that, look, if they're not going to work, that's their decision. Feel free, go. You're better off putting your time elsewhere, right, to the other kids who do want to be there and learn, right? And it's like, so yeah, offer your help, but when it gets rejected every single day, right, and let's say within the first 10 minutes, and then you come back around another 15 minutes later and it still gets rejected, and it comes back later, it still gets rejected, they're refusing to start with their work, they're not engaging with you in any way, shape, or form, as long as they're not being a distraction, to sort of leave them alone. And look, I don't really know what more you can do in that situation. And so, it's unfortunate. Should they be in a different environment? Look, I mean, maybe there's probably a case for that. I have no doubt. It's like, because maybe if somebody was sitting on them 24/7, in the sense that, like, right behind them 24/7, they would get some more work done. But it sounds like you can't even get them to do that. It's just a matter of indifference, and they don't care. And so you can't make them care. And that's just a fact. So let's see what other people are saying here. Potter1612 says, I'm very curious to see how this question is split between high school and elementary teachers. As a high school teacher, I give up on students all the time, not in a serious way, but in small ways. I don't fight phones. I don't bother asking students to expand their short responses. I don't fight to keep their attention. One of my mentors once told me I need to stop caring more than the kids, and that really struck with me. So I don't know if that counts as giving up, but at a certain point I stopped caring that much. I do feel like you do definitely get beat down, especially by the end of the year, to the point where you do not care as much. And this particularly is the case with rules and expectations. You have certain rules and expectations in your classroom, and when they're constantly broken all the time, and there's absolutely no progress. In fact, there's actually regression in terms of their ability to comply with those rules and expectations. It's like, what am I supposed to do? It's like, I got my hands tied here. And you could argue, well, this is a system, this is a policy issue. Like, if this was taken more serious with more serious consequences, that this probably would not have occurred. And it's like, look, I I fully agree with you. I think that things could be a little bit better, especially if we targeted these students from a very young age. So it wasn't just the idea that they come into middle school and it's like now they start having rules and structure. It's like no. This should have been from day one, and probably should have been very, very, very early, way earlier than we have in our K-12 system. I'm talking probably like age 3, we want to start getting kids acquainted with school in some capacity. Maybe that's not all day, but in some capacity. They need these social interactions in a nice structured setting, so that way they understand the rules and etiquettes and societal expectations that are placed upon them by the time they get into that middle school level. And so at least that's where I'm at, is middle school level. But you could say high school or elementary. And the reason I'm saying middle school is just because if we're talking about high school and elementary, let's go right in the middle, middle school. But yeah, I could rant about this all day. So let's see here. This kid is elementary, and I do feel some obligation to be like someone who cares in his life, but honestly, I'm just growing hostility about it. The entirety of the situation falls on me. No other school resources are significantly involved. It's just exhausting. It's like, look, dude, you've done all that you can. It's like from now on, it's in their hands. Don't feel bad about yourself. It's like that's part of the issue. It's like teachers care too much, and it's like that's a great thing. You do obviously want very caring individuals in that role who are nurturing, but in the same breath, it's like, don't beat yourself up over it. It's like at the end of the day, look, you've done your part, right? Now it's out of your control, right? And so, so that's the secret. You care enough for the kids you don't care. True that. Don't feel bad for this. Please, happens to all of us, but very few people say it out loud. At some point, you can't keep working harder than your student does, and if he doesn't bother to show up, you can't magic knowledge into his head or motivation into his body. True that. Yeah, you can't just like that, right? It doesn't work that way. If it did, we'd all be billionaires because we would have figured out how to learn, teach people things in 2 seconds, because I wish somebody would snap books into my head or knowledge into my head so I didn't have to study, right? But that's the way it is. You gotta want it. You gotta want it. You gotta want it bad, right? And so you gotta be on the grind, and your students have to be on the grind, and at least in some capacity. Some comes easier for others. Some, but at the end of the day, they gotta put in some effort. Let's see here. So JM West says, I won't say I've given up on a student, but I've definitely stopped going the extra mile for students who show no effort or interest. I care more than they do. Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's like, I don't really know. Like, I'll give you an example of this, right? It's like I have students all the time. They're completely indifferent to work. And it's like you'll sit right next to them and you'll try to coax them into doing some work. And maybe, just maybe, it's like you might be able to get them to get started, and that's if you're lucky. So that's a good day. But let's say that you're able to get them started. It's like, most of the time, it's like as soon as you walk away, because again, like, what do you think this is a tutoring session? Like, what do you think this is a tutoring session? Like, no, we got 15 other kids in the class. It's like we have to help them out too, right? And so, like, as soon as you walk away, then they fly off into la la land, right? They don't want to continue with their work, right? Let's go do something else that they deem as more fun, right? So, and it's like, look, dude, like, you can only make learning so fun, or you can only differentiate learning so much, or you can only teach content in certain manners that's effective, right? And so, like, let's say you're like playing like a game, for instance, right? And you're playing a game in class, and you're like, okay, like, this is a fun activity. It's like, okay, but it still can't compete with other games that they find online that are not related necessarily to education, or maybe have a different structure that they like more. It's like, and there's infinite number of options for that, right? It's like, I don't know, like, what's a popular game? Let's say that you have like a student who's, I don't know, like, I saw one kid, I think he's trying to play Five Nights at Freddy's. And I was like, oh, okay. Now, I haven't played that yet, but I know it's a really good horror game, according to people, and I got to see the movie still, so I'm going to have to do that. But look, if they're playing that versus a game on, like, what's practically trivia, it's like, dude, they don't care, and it's like, you can try to reward them and motivate them with certain positive incentives, but it only goes so far, right? So, yeah, I don't know, but I mean, that's a whole other conversation, like how to make learning interesting, and I feel like, as educators, we tend to do a pretty okay job at it, especially nowadays, as we've sort of moved away from the traditional lecture format. But there still needs to be this just rote memorization, this rote learning, or whatever you want to call it, just that grindy, tedious form of learning, in addition to some of the projects and some of the review games and some of the fun little activities. But that's a portion of it. Yes, it's like, but then there's still that part that's a little bit less interesting. And even still, it's like, trying to get them to fully commit to it can be very difficult sometimes. And so obviously you got to utilize a variety of differentiation methods to try to make it as successful as you possibly can, but it's not foolproof. Anyways, here we go. Next person says, if the kid doesn't care and the parents don't care, I wouldn't fash myself about it. You can lead a horse to water. I don't even know what that word means. I wouldn't hit myself about it. I wouldn't hurt myself about it. Beat myself up thrash myself about it. Maybe it's thrash. I don't know what that word is. I've never saw that word, but maybe I'm just stupid. Anyways, you can lead a horse to water. Exactly what I said, right? Here we go. Do you have an MTSS team? Blah, blah, blah. Interesting one. It's like, yeah, maybe you could say, yeah, you could maybe, actually, this is a response to a different comment. Never mind. Someone's at the end of the year now, if nothing is done yet as help, it's not going to. Yes, it's the end of the year now. If they're not changing, they're not going to. They haven't changed yet, they're not going to now. And oftentimes by the end of the year, you just start to notice some regression. And so, like, you could say, well, there's always time to turn around. And it's like, yes, and that will help you to a degree. And I think some people do take advantage of that. But it's pretty rare that you see a complete turnaround, like somebody who's completely different. They're getting like a 10% in the class, all of a sudden they go to like a 70% or something. It's like, that's pretty rare. And so most of the time you can gamble on the fact that that's not really going to happen. Now you can try your best, and again, like I mentioned, like, don't give up, right? But like, don't beat yourself up over it, right? Like, look, they want to deny your services. They want to brush off the learning. It's like, that's on them. At the end of the day, you can't force them to, especially when you have so many other students. It's like, let's say you got a class of 15, right? And you have an hour-long class. That's 4 minutes per student. Now you obviously have some instruction time in there. Let's just say it's 15 minutes, right? So now you got 3 minutes per student. And it's like, that's not enough time to really sit down with the ones that need that extra support and help. So then you could argue, well, it's a funding and policy issue. It's like, but at the end of the day, there still needs to be that responsibility. It's like, you go to a job, it's like your boss is not sitting over you 24/7. It's like, you have to learn to take some individual responsibility in order to be successful in the world. And you have to recognize that not doing so has consequences. And so I think that, again, like, it's always so funny. In the field of education, sometimes I feel like I sound conservative, even though I'm very liberal. Just because it's like, look, you need this self-responsibility. It's like, you have to, understand, take accountability for your actions. It's like, all right, I got an F. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean that I got an F? It's like, well, it means that you don't do any work and you're setting yourself up for failure in the future. It's like, yeah, but I'm not going to use history in the real world. It's like, yeah, you're right, but you're going to use that work ethic, right? And your grades are a reflection of that work ethic. And you could say, well, where does work ethic come from? It's like, well, there's a whole other conversation, right? But, these skills that we learn now, not even just necessarily the content itself, you could say, but like the skills using to, not only the hard work, the qualities behind that, but the research component, for instance, right? That would be a good skill, or just looking things up, even if it's not necessarily research, or just learning how to type faster, or creating a presentation, or collaborating with others. Like, some of these skills that are just like, they just translate into everything, right? Overarching skills. It's like, these can be fostered, and if you don't have those, it's like, then you're going to get left behind. And it's like, yeah, maybe you can find a job somewhere, but it's certainly not going to be a job that you want to do, nor is it going to be a job that is going to be able to sustain you in the long term with any fulfillment. Obviously, people are not necessarily doing jobs that they always want to do, and I'm not saying that everybody will, but what I am saying is, it's like, look, you have a good opportunity. It's like, you're born in the United States, you're born in a place where you actually have some opportunity, unlike a lot of countries. It's like, you should take advantage of it, right? It's like, you don't know what it would be like to, I don't know, be working in some like lithium mine or something, or just like mining for cobalt, or I don't know, something, in like some foreign country, and it just looks terrible. I think this is what I was looking at the other day. It's like, everybody's just rushing in just so they can get enough to feed their families. It's like, dude, like, take advantage of the opportunity you got. Even if it's not perfect, take advantage of it, and make the most out of your situation. And not everybody is going to get their dream job or do something that they relatively enjoy. But it's like, even if you can't get something that you necessarily enjoy, at least you can get something that's going to pay you a decent amount of money. And obviously there's always people who have to do the jobs that people don't want to do, but with enough work ethic and responsibility, like just showing up on time, you give some decent effort, it's like, you're already beating 90% of people. Just do that, or and you're probably gonna be fine. You just retire somewhere in 40 years and you'll be all good. But anyways, I don't know. Like, I could rant about this forever. I think it's a matter of individual responsibility, and like the students need to recognize this, and they're not going to recognize this until they realize that there's consequences for their actions. And I think that they'll get the wake-up call later on in life, and it's unfortunate that you clearly can't do much about it now. Obviously, I would recommend them for additional services if there were remedial classes or something along those lines. But if there's not, because a lot of places are moving away from that, unfortunately, then you sort of got your hands tied here, and they'll just pass on and pass on and pass on until they get to high school, again, because you mentioned they're in elementary, and eventually they'll get to like 11th, 12th grade. They'll fail the state examinations or their end of course exams, and or not do some career and technical program or something, or whatever the requirements are to get a diploma, and they're screwed. Because everybody, again, there was no consequences for their actions and them acting this way for many, many years. And everybody always like to say, well, if they had, it's like, well, life is hard. It's like, yeah, of course life's hard. It's like, but if this has been a repeated problem for an entire year, it's like something has to change. Like, you can't just go on like this forever. And especially when there's you got people trying to help you. So I don't know what it is, but have a conversation with some of your stakeholders in your school, and hopefully we can hopefully get the student on track, right? I mean, that's what we all want at the end of the day, as teachers, get the students give them the best possible opportunity, and so they just got to take advantage of that, and I think that there's opportunity to be taken advantage of. And so I don't know your school in specific, but I'm sure there's resources out there, and if there's not, there's a variety of resources you can look up, and if you don't know them, just go on like ChatGPT or something and type in resources for X, Y, or Z. There's a million nonprofits out there, a million for-profits out there. They're probably willing to help you, and you just to put them in the right direction. And I think that you'll be good, but don't beat yourself up over it. You've done all that you can. You don't even really got to go that extra mile. But if it's bothering you, make it known, and like, you should be collaborating with the other stakeholders anyways. And so like, make it known to them when you see them, and so it's not really like that much extra work for you. 2 minutes on ChatGPT, done, right? And tell them what you've seen, show them some data, say, look, here's what I think that we might want to look into, done, and then have this conversation with everybody else. It's as simple as that. And you're gonna do that for a lot of kids throughout your careers. And so if I don't know if you're a young teacher or not, but it's teacher support and advice. And so if you're struggling with this now, I imagine you're a young teacher, because us older teachers get a little bit beaten down from it. And I'm not even that old of a teacher, but we get beaten down from it pretty quickly. And so I don't know. Thank you everybody for watching. I would love if you guys would subscribe. It would mean the world. I'd be super, super happy and grateful. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments, and we will talk to you later, ladies and gentlemen. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye.